The session is about to begin. Please extend a warm welcome to our masterclass speakers.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us the afternoon session on day 2 before we all head off to the airport or enjoy the weather. So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how it's been impacting our business and how the impact is going to continue to grow. I know in the ad tech industry we have definitely adopted all the applications. So today we're going to dive into some topics about how it affects our business partners, our customers, as well as our employees. So I'm Josh Hare. I'm head of sales at Viant. Viant is a demand-side DSP, buy-side only. And I've got Rob Davis on stage with me, president and CMO of Novus. So to kick things off, Rob, why don't you give us a little bit about your background, about the agency, and then talk about your objectives for 2024.
Great. Yeah, so Rob Davis, I'm President and Chief Marketing Officer at Novus, and you may be wondering, well, who the hell is Novus? We're a mid-sized media agency. Kind of our specialty is combining sort of the intersection of audiences and geography. So it's a little different, kind of a different hook, but our belief is where people live, work, and play is a huge determining factor in really every aspect of their life. If you think about just slang, language, and sports teams you cheer, but of course, you know, the brands, how you respond to brands and how you respond to media. And so bringing those two elements together is kind of our hook, our secret sauce. And so some of the clients we work with, Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, so we support 26,000 combined stores for them as an example. And so, you know, a lot of digital, a lot of, like everyone, you know, programmatically smart targeting, but again, bringing that element of geography because for a physical retailer, every store is kind of a different story. So that's kind of our hook. And I think in terms of our I guess my background, I've been there about 5 years now. I got what I guess you could describe the quarter-century itch. I spent over 25 years at Starcom prior to that, and so working on some, you know, really iconic brands. I ran Airbnb globally. I ran Kellogg globally for a number of years. Allstate, Kellogg, Disney, on and on and on. So it's been a fun run. Yeah.
Pretty varied background there.
Yeah. Covered a lot of ground.
And so now with AI and everything we're doing, I know we partner strongly together. How are you guys harnessing it right now for your customers as well as your employees?
Yeah, I mean, employees, it's funny. You know, a lot of times even like the entry level folks are almost ahead of leadership sometimes. You know, the other day we're a media agency, so sometimes if we have a creative idea, we don't have all the resources necessarily to mock it up. So I'm used to seeing like some clip art kind of junk. And the other day, you know, team presented a presentation. I was like, wow, this looks amazing. Like, you really brought this to life. And, you know, we use Midjourney, we use DALL-E. Like, okay, I didn't tell you to do that. So I think, you know, it's great. We just kind of empower the teams. We did buy Microsoft Copilot license for the agency. So just simple stuff, like integrating into the PowerPoint and the Excel and those types of things. But from a client standpoint, I think there's kind of 3 big ways that we're finding that we're using AI for media. Certainly there's a million applications, but for media, it's kind of that bucket of DSP integration, right? We're seeing in a lot of cases, which, you know, automated bidding, which has been in the marketplace for a while, but with you guys, we're finding massive savings in things like bid shading and enabling to use intelligence to really help us kind of, it's not set and forget it, but to really let the machine sort of guide, you know, in a first price versus second price kind of auction situation. So that's one big bucket is sort of the automated bidding. The second big bucket, I'm sure a lot of you are seeing, is just analyzing vast amounts of data. So just in the DSP or even outside of the DSP, just when you're parsing it, again, for us, you know, a lot of it's geography. So everything we do is at a zip code level. We did a big program for Walgreens, which they're nationally, they're all over the country, but we analyzed 14,000 zip codes and at an item level, price level, individual kind of store level. And so it's kind of a needle in a haystack for a human to go, all right, what's the insight, and so using AI and machine learning to kind of quickly adapt and learn. So that's the second bucket. I think a lot of folks are kind of doing that. The third that's interesting, I don't know, I'd love to hear from some of the folks out here, but we're starting to experiment a bit with insights. So using AI for human consumer insights and things like the synthetic society, tools for optimization across channels, and even like a focus group, kind of using it in that fashion.
Yeah, so actually that takes me to my next question then. So you were just quoted in the press talking about how you guys are using AI specifically for stimulated focus groups. So
Yeah.
can you elaborate on that a little bit more about how you're using it and what are the outcomes you're getting?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about focus, so it's focus groups still have a role. They're not all the time. Sometimes you do surveys. A lot of times we use behavioral data, right? That's really key. Through your DSP, we have a big partnership with you guys. But supplementing that with sometimes just getting a little more texture of talking to real people live. But if you think about it, like it's maybe if you're lucky, you can talk to a dozen people on a deep level or a couple dozen people. And so by using AI, though, what we're able to do is scrape a variety of sources, and then it's simulated, so it's not actual people, but it simulates what a response might be at scale. Mm-hmm. So anything from, could be what's the impact of this particular creative versus that particular creative, to if you saw this in television, linear television versus CTV, does it change the way you feel about it? Does it change your attentiveness level? Those types of things. So we're able to kind of, instead of 12 or 24 people at a time, we're able to do 100,000 simulated people at a time. And so it's really, again, it's not perfect, but it enables us to kind of get deeper insights at a way bigger scale.
Yeah, and so when you say it's not perfect, we've all seen what we get out of our own ChatGPT, how accurate it can be. How do you make sure that what you're getting from these focus groups could be as accurate as possible for a human response?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just sort of the garbage in, garbage out, right? Of any, what data set is it training on? I'm sure many of you have read, there's been a couple of recent studies that are, even some of the early generative AI, like a ChatGPT, which is the most well-known, in some ways is getting dumber, right? The expectation is it gets smarter as it kind of rolls out and there's more, but what's happening is, it was originally sort of trained on scholarly, resources and data scientists that were mostly interfacing and asking it the questions, and now as more and more people and the masses are necessarily asking logical, smart questions, and so it's almost dumbing down in some ways, and so they're having to kind of adapt about what else it's able to train on, and so I think that the easiest thing we do is just kind of limit the data sources, so what we're training on, and so in the case of like the focus groups, the initial wave was trained on things like reviews on a client's website. Mm-hmm. So there's some pros and cons to that. Some of it is good because you get the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the AI starts to understand what consumers are looking for. The bad is there's a lot of garbage in the review section.
Yep. Yeah.
So exactly what you train on, and kind of constraining that, and being smart about which AI you allow, which access to which data, is one of the ways we help try to keep the quality of the output up.
Yeah.
And then I think the second part would be the proof's in the pudding. So validating and just kind of that logic check, but finding when you put it into market, if you have an AI-based insight, when you put it into market, do you get results? And ultimately, it's about business results.
Right.
So if they pay out, you're onto something. If they don't, maybe you better relook at it.
Yeah, and that's where most of us are used to using it to make our campaigns more efficient, analyze data. But one of the things that we have at Viant that your team is going to get access to is called Chat with Data. So it's being able to go and use our natural language to go through and create all the queries that data scientists would normally go and do. So how can tools like this empower your team to be more efficient and empower the agency to be more efficient?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the next step. I think it's really around the next kind of phase of AI is happening. It's changing so fast, as we all know. But I think the next phase is natural language queries, and even voice command. But just right now, you kind of have to be really specific about how you almost have to game it to get the answer you want. You have to ask it in the right way, and then keep revising. And there's weirdly is all the proclamations of efficiency and hours saving, but if you're spending all your time doing that, it's still not quite right. So I think that's what we're looking forward to, is seeing that more natural language where you can just kind of say in plain English what you're trying to find.
Yeah.
And then query it that way.
Yeah. And so how is your team adapting to this? Are they accepting the technology? Are they scared it's going to replace their jobs? what's it like inside Novus?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's I think people are hungry for it. I think there's one of the speakers at the kickoff here at the session Monday, or I guess it was Tuesday morning, said there's I think he called it like an epidemic or crisis of not doing what you think is right, even though you know it's right because you're too busy. Mm-hmm. Right? I think we can all feel that, right? Like and there's times where you're like, I know this could be better, but I'm too damn busy. And so I think there's a hunger to embrace it. And again, a lot of times it bubbles up from the bottom up. Like we bought Copilot license for everybody, and they were like, "Oh, we've been using AI for 18 months, so thank you, but we're way ahead of you." So I think there is a hunger, and it's all about elevating. So most people want to be strategic and insight driven, and less in the weeds of the like, oh God, how do I filter the spreadsheets so there's non-zero data and I re-average it? I mean, it's as dumb as that, or how do I mean, literally, you just using verbal or text commands, change all the headlines in this PowerPoint to Arial 17, and that helps you. It saves you an hour.
Yeah.
That you can be strategic and really drive your client's business forward.
And so how are your clients adapting to it? You mentioned they already had access to it, but then how are you guys getting them to adopt it more and implement it in the campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in a lot of cases, the clients are on board, again, if the numbers come back.
Yeah.
So we did a campaign with you, well, across a number of our clients, but over the last 12 months, we quantified, it's an estimate, but we quantified, I think it's $6.7 million in savings from using the AI-based automated bidding. We watch it, we monitor it, we bring in human insight, we make sure it doesn't overcorrect in certain KPIs and all those things. But when you go back and tell clients that you were part of this, almost $7 million in savings, they're like, cool, keep going.
Yeah.
And then just on like a day-to-day life. So we had a pitch a couple weeks ago, and we did again, we're not a creative agency, so like I edited like a closing video, and I used AI. I used AI voiceover, and it's a little bit of a hack job, frankly. Like I'm not a professional, but we feel like, let's play it. Maybe they'll get a kick out of it. And it was a little bit of a kind of a sweet, like just talking about their brand and how it was meant to be inspirational. And a couple of the clients teared up. And
really? Tears?
I was like, yes. And then the CMO came to me afterwards, and she goes, be honest with me. Did AI write that script? And I was like, AI did take a first pass at the script. It did. Like they expect it.
Just like many of our emails that we send out.
Yes,
right?
like it's somewhat expected now already, right? And as long as there's oversight, I think most clients embrace it. It's like, hey, if it's making your job easier, as long as you're, the ideas, the strategy, and the oversight to make sure we're watching the right KPIs, then most are all in.
Yeah. And so with that, being able to drive more savings, kind of automate a lot of the optimizations or creative development, where are you reallocating the resources, or where are you focusing the teams on?
Strategy and ideas, creative ideas, new ways of breaking through. One of the big conversations I'm sure many of you are having, with clients and partners is, we can crush a KPI. If it's ROAS, we'll crush ROAS. If it's changing perception, we'll crush changing perception. Most clients say yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's the balance and the nuance you still need humans, because the AI will go, man, we'll crush ROAS, but suddenly sales volume will dip, or impressions will dip, or reach will dip, or right. There's always a trade-off that you kind of need a little human intervention in, and so that's where we're kind of trying to have our teams elevate. How do we? And then the other thing is you're modeling on a lot of times, you're training the AI on what happened in the past. Now it's getting better, it's getting smarter about scenario planning and predicting the future, but primarily it's if something didn't exist before, it can't optimize to something that didn't exist. And so when we're dreaming up, well, what's a channel that doesn't exist today, or a tactic that no one's ever done before, that's where we want our people increasingly spending their time.
Yeah. There's, just from us, from the DSP side, there's millions of data points to optimize or action against. So we feel let the machines do that while we can focus the sales team, our planners on really, bringing in new business and helping drive revenue for the company.
Exactly right.
Yeah. With that, though, how do you? I know privacy has been a pretty big topic here, to say the least. How are you guys managing the technology, managing the applications to make sure that you are adhering to privacy regulations and also just the ethical aspect of advertising.
Yeah. Ethics.
Yeah, I know, right?
I did, when I started, my optimistic, idealistic self, when I started at Leo Burnett a million years ago, we did lunch and learns, and I put up an overhead acetate projector, if anybody remembers those, and my title was Ethics in Advertising, and my boss goes, oh good, this should be short. But joking aside, it is obviously critically important, and so it's a couple of different angles for us. On the kind of logistics side, things like I mentioned, like a Microsoft Copilot, or even inviting ChatGPT into your organization, which it's open. Most people, whether you know it or not, I guarantee you, your employees are using that and other AI. We have made sure our IT department is taking a look at what's coming in. Things like Copilot, it can monitor Teams calls. So my CEO got a little freaked out because we just, it's like. She had to step out of a meeting, so I just went summarize the meeting while she left, and I sent it to her, and she's like, "Oh my God!" Like it literally, it's like she said this, then he said this, then she said this, and it's like it is listening. So, all right, do we want who has access to that? Do we want just the board to have that? Do we want people junior level have access? So just thinking through, it's simple, dumb stuff, but like those when the AI can reach into different tools and different, you can literally go, hey. Write me a PowerPoint deck that's based on this deck we did 6 months ago. Well, who has access to that deck that was from 6 months ago? Right. And so there's just, like anything else, there's governance and infrastructure, that kind of stuff. And then, just setting the ethical guidelines about where and when do we use it. Like I said, we define today those 3 buckets. So we don't do creative. That's a whole nother conversation about copyright and all those things, right? But for us, it's those buckets of DSP optimization. So we work with you guys to make sure that's all completely compliant. There's the bucket of data processing. We don't touch PII. Some agencies do. Our policy is to not. That gives us just like one less headache to not deal with. And then kind of the insight generation. And again, no PII. And so just making sure we follow privacy guidelines.
So we talk about how great it is and efficiencies it brings us. Where have you seen it go wrong, and how did you guys course correct?
Yeah. Everyone's seen it go wrong. Have you seen some of the original image-based AI was like a horror movie. Like the hands coming out of nowhere and 8 fingers. And so you do have to remember that's the same AI that can be doing some other things. And so I don't think we've seen it go horribly wrong. It's more what I was talking about earlier about it will just be if you give it one KPI, it'll be ruthless about that KPI. To the detriment of if you don't explicitly say, these are the other things that we're looking to do, or a human planner. Well, obviously, I don't want to maximize ROI if it means I'm going to get a 2% reach.
Yep.
I mean, it's implicit, but if you're not explicit with an AI, we have seen it go a little off the cliff, and so you got to reel it back in.
Yeah, where the human touch comes back into it. So.
There's still always, I think, foreseeable future, there'll be a need for humans.
So, speaking of the future, where is this heading? What direction are you going to take this with Novus and your customers?
Yeah, we're, bluntly, that last piece I talked about, the kind of insight generation, that's very nascent. So that's kind of our next step is to dig in. We've got a couple partnerships where we're starting to build some products off of it. So like the term synthetic society, which sounds kind of both cool and maybe a little scary or creepy, but just that notion of how can we maximize that understanding? How do you make sure it's predictive and not just backward looking? I think that's kind of one element of where we're looking in the future to do more. I think the other element is what we talked about, more natural language processing.
Yeah.
Just making it easier for junior folks who just need to cut through mountains of data.
Yep.
Just make that easy to do so they can start getting quickly learn how to bring new ideas and innovation.
Yeah. And that's the thing, there's so much data out there. It's just how can you cut through it, which again, if you're able to use your voice instead of doing all the SQL queries and learning code to do it, the better it is.
Exactly right.
All right, so what do you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years with this?
My gosh, who the hell knows?
Okay, 6 months.
6 months. I think it's for us. I think it's continuing to optimize on the automated bidding. I think it's increasingly how do you bring in balance multiple KPIs. We developed a tool we call Full Sail. All of our tools, because we're geographic, they all have these cute nautical names. So Beacon and. So bear with me. But for Full Sail, it's the idea of, a lot of our clients are coming to us and saying, it was up, it's the pendulum. everything's about upper funnel. Now it's about lower funnel, pandemic, and like we just need immediate sales. It's lower funnel. And then it's like, oh crap, like no one likes our brand anymore and perception is eroded. Now we're back to upper. And then now the hot trend, I presume you guys are seeing, is full funnel. So we created full sale to kind of optimize across the full funnel. So including outside of like, people still use television and radio and out of home. I know it's not your business,
That's
but
what I was
it does
just going to ask.
happen.
How are you tying that all in then?
And that's the thing, right? That is still not every client, but many, while digital's still the predominant channel, like how do you tie? And there is a role for linear television still for many clients. And so that's where I think, right now it's pretty manual and we're mashing together different data sets. And that's where I think we see the next phase and literally like the next 6 months. We're already doing some pilots where we kind of, how do you bring those things together in a way that the AI can sort of help model out the likely implication.
Yeah. And so how big, obviously data insights, analytics is a big part of this. How big is your team that's working with all these tools to get you your results?
It's, I would call small but mighty.
Small but mighty?
Small but mighty,
like Novus, right?
Like Novus, or small but mighty, yeah. So in some ways, most of the agency touches some of these tools, some a little more on the planning side. Like the full sale is more of a planning tool, and then we've got a smaller team. It's literally like a few dozen people that are in the DSP type platform.
Yep.
But it's got arms. So we've built kind of an extension through, I'm going to blank on the name, but formerly known as the Data Lake.
Viant Data Platform, VDP.
Viant Data Platform,
Yep.
sorry. But we've built, again, our hook is geography, and so we've built kind of extensions of that bring it down to a zip code level. So there's a team of people there, we call it, again, cute names, localytics, because it's really geospatial analytics that they try to bring it down to. So it's kind of, everybody's got their specialty, but they're, kind of touching all aspects of it.
Cool. And so what advice do you have for the group here on going forward with AI?
I think, it's funny to be up here and I met somebody the other day and he was like, I am an AI expert. And I'm like, well, that's cool because it only has really existed in this form for like 18 months. So I'm not sure how you're like a lifelong expert. But I think it's like anything, they just jump in. It's the cost of entry is really low. Even if it's something as simple as ChatGPT or Copilot, just start. It's shocking once you start embracing it of how much it can really help, but also where you go, okay, well it's not going to work for that.
Yeah.
But jump in and start. Set your parameters. Make sure you have the ethical and the technical governance in place. But it's one of those things. I think just my advice would be jump in, start small, but then kind of quickly have your roadmap for where you want to take it.
Yeah. And so what's on your roadmap? What you mentioned ChatGPT and Copilot. What other tools are you guys using?
We've been playing around with a tool called Native AI, which is one of those, I'm not sure if they're here, but one of those kind of insight generation tools. We have a partnership with Arima that we've built into, instead of just looking at reach and frequency, which is kind of the old school way of doing optimization. We've built in that element. Again, it's kind of part of our full sale approach, which is that synthetic society. So you can go, all right, well, if I do this, that's cool. It drove more foot traffic into a retail location for immediate sales, but the awareness is going to suffer or the consideration is going to suffer. So you can kind of go, clients will come to you and go like, our two main goals are awareness and daily foot traffic. And it's like, well, I hate to tell you this, but those are two different things.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a trade-off. So how do you optimize it? So it's like it's not this, it's not this. How do you get it at least maybe more like this?
Yeah.
And that's really where we're focusing, kind of the next phase.
Cool. Are you guys doing anything homegrown, trying to bring any technology in-house?
A little bit. Bluntly, we have a little bit more of a borrow and buy versus a 100% build.
Yeah.
We're mid-size. I came from a holding company. They're amazing, they're great, but I don't have $3.8 billion to spend on a massive infrastructure, and frankly, we're beating them sometimes with considerably less than $3.8 billion. So it changes so fast. Our philosophy is let's build like we've done with you guys. Let's take, you're in the development game, and then we go, all right, well, our hook is geography, so let's make some tools that help extract things down to the way we want to look at it. So that's more of our hook, and that way, we can adapt as the macro landscape changes without having to start from scratch.
Cool. Well, I know we're running up on the time, so any questions from the group? Yeah?
I have a question. I recognize, I loved how you set up Novus Media. And and I think you said being geography and consumer first.
Yeah.
Your Dollar Tree example. So what advice do you have just from a digital media standpoint that brands that have physical locations but also digital experiences, where you feel like the biggest opportunity that you're seeing that not enough brands are really leveraging on, whether it's AI or not? Obviously, it's probably partnering with your agency to figure that out, but advice for businesses that have physical and digital.
Yeah, great question. I don't know if everybody could hear it, but so the question is, outside of just specific technical digital optimization, how do we think about leveraging geography? Is that a fair restatement? So I get a little crazy and evangelical about this because we've seen it so many times. If you're a physical brick and mortar retailer, it's a no-brainer. But we've even seen for national brands, we had a software brand. You can buy software from anywhere. We had a software client, but it's as simple as this: birds of a feather flock together. So it's true, right? Just think about your own neighborhood. Like if you might be in a Hispanic neighborhood, or it might be a higher income neighborhood, or it might be it's a sports rivalry neighborhood. People in very small communities tend to cluster together where they live, work, and play, and so frankly, it's a cookie alternative. So we hardly ever use cookies anymore because we find that geospatial data and clustering actually can be as good a predictor as a lot of paid third-party data. So we're able to drive down CPMs just because we don't add that layer. So it's a huge missed opportunity, I think, for a lot of marketers, especially if you're brick and mortar physical, but even if you're not. We have a financial services client. They're targeting a certain, it's Thrivent Financial, it's one of our clients, and so they are a Lutheran-based financial service. It's kind of different. So obviously their customers want to make money, but they also, generosity is one of their, so you can go say, where are neighborhoods where people tend to be more generous with their money and are more charitable? You can find that geographically, and so using that data is just a completely different way of, and I think it's an often overlooked way of thinking about targeting. Good question.
Yeah, I'd love to know from both of you your guidance and perspective for large holdcos, right? How are they going to adapt? How can they be nimble? How can they adopt this given the challenges that large holdcos have versus a smaller, nimble shop?
Yeah. I can give my perspective.
Yeah,
one of the reasons I'm no longer at a holding company is I was finding it in many cases, not all, but in many cases they're a little slow, and because they build a lot of infrastructure, it's kind of hard for them to pivot. And so they, if you spend billions of dollars in several years building a whole, platform, optimization platform, it's hard to move off of that platform. So I think, what I found at the holding company, to not be too negative against them, sometimes the smaller subdivisions or smaller units within the holding company kind of become the incubators, where, in my experience, I found that they could kind of get away with going off the larger game plan, and then there's almost like a plan B. So that's, if you're at a holding company, that's one piece of advice, is just, find those little incubators that maybe you start on some smaller clients, and try a few different things, and then if it doesn't work, no problem, but if it does work, you got a plan B for the macro thing. But for us, again, I think we find it enables us to adapt really quickly by having that. Let's build hooks onto other technology versus building a whole thing ourselves.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question?
I would actually agree with that from the vendor side. I would say the mid-tier opcos, so the smaller agencies from the holding companies, they do lean forward into technology. They're usually the early adopters. The larger the agency, a little bit slower moving. But then what I'd also say too is, we are technology. We've built this software where agencies, they buy the software or lease the software, rent the software. They haven't historically built it themselves. So the mid-sized agencies, the smaller holding co agencies, early adopters, then it works up the chain, and then eventually they try to build it themselves.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I think that's it on time, unless there's any more questions. I think there's one more question.
Waving?
Oh, is that it? Oh, I thought you were asking your question. So,
Got the hook.
All right.
All right, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, everybody. It was fun. Appreciate you guys turning up. So.
Very nice.